magical being. I can do such things.
I didn't realize you were a magical being.
Yep.
That is cool.
Beans are great.
You know, if they plant you in the ground, you'll grow up to be a vine that goes up to a giant's house in the sky.
I'm gonna have to sell my corpse to a boy named Jack.
That could work.
Today,
We are talking about miracles, though.
we are. Today we're talking about prayer.
A miraculous prayer.
Who would have guessed that talking about his prayer?
I guess the prayer wasn't miraculous. The results were. And what he prayed for was miraculous. So there you go.
Prayed for a miracle and he got one. So, the section we're looking at is going to be 1 Kings chapter 17, verses
20 down through like 24.
20 to
Somewhere
the end
in
of the
there.
chapter, basically.
Somewhere in there. Do we need to do any background on this? I mean,
maybe a little bit. Just
Yeah.
okay. So there's a prophet dude named Elijah, and he was staying
heard
at a
of him,
person's house.
he's a familiar guy.
Yeah,
Pretty important.
prophet dude was staying at person's house. Person had child went and person goes, Elijah, help. And so Elijah's like, God, why you make child go make child be not. There we go. There's my summary of my TED Talk.
Okay, so we're all done.
Yep. Okay, here's how it actually goes.
Well, it kind of did go like that.
It was like that, only less noises
and
hand motions.
One of the cool things here about this situation with Elijah, and he's staying with a widow in a foreign land. He's hiding from Jezebel, who is daughter of the king of Tyre and Sidon.
Tyre and Tidon.
I can't get the blah blah. But Tyre and Sidon, particularly Sidon, her father was the king of there, and she's looking to kill him.
And the dude stays like right next to Sidon.
Yeah, right there. I mean,
It's like this woman
in Zarephath.
this
is the name of
woman,
the town.
this princess's father, a king, is looking to kill you. So you're gonna camp out right next to,
He's
his
like hanging out
capital
next
city.
to the palace. It's like, let me get a job working for the king. His daughter wants to kill me. But no, so of all
Gotta
the places,
love the Bible.
of all the places God could have sent him,
See,
God sends him to this widow.
That's one of the things. You know the phrase, the truth is stranger than fiction? Sometimes one of the reasons you gotta believe the Bible is just because it's
Nobody would make that up.
it's so I don't want to say dumb, but some of the stuff
So
that people
simple.
did is
It's
just
so yeah, it's
straightforward and
yeah,
clueless. It's so human
yeah.
that nobody could just fake it.
Well, and that's one of the
There.
things too. The Bible, it shows the flaws of even the heroes.
Yeah,
It doesn't make them perfect
yeah.
beings or something, and that's a beautiful thing.
Where this guy was so amazing that when a king is hunting for him, he decides that I'm gonna hide next to the king's palace.
Well, he didn't decide it. God sent him there.
Yeah, that's true.
No, but he's staying with this widow, and Jesus says when Jesus is talking about this situation, he
I was
says,
reading that last night.
were there not any widows in Israel that need? But no, God sends Elijah to stay with a widow in a heathen country,
Mm-hmm.
and she believes in God more than the people of Israel do.
Yep.
And so, but that's the thing. And
It was quite a cutting remark from Jesus.
Oh, it was
where it's
harsh.
like, and so Elijah went and he had to stay with somebody from another country, and it just the entire section's implying that's the way things are gonna go.
Yeah.
That eventually people from other countries,
God's
the
own
Gentiles, are gonna be better than you lot are.
God's own people are going to reject him while foreigners accept him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but anyway, that's this, and Jesus talks about this story.
Yep.
And he, of all the things of Elijah that Elijah did, this is the one. I mean, not this part of the dead kid, but the staying with the widow part, which obviously leads into it. And you see this widow, she's just like, well, he's like, can I stay with you, and everything? Can you give me something to eat? And she's like, I've got enough flour here and oil. I'm fixing to make a little piece of bread for me and my son, and then we're going to starve to death. And Elijah's like, cool, make me one first. It's like,
So sad.
but I mean, but who responds to that by going, yeah, you're right. I should think of others. I mean, before myself. When I'm about to starve to death, I should fix you some bread.
Yep.
And I mean, this widow woman is a special lady.
She was.
I mean, she really was, and she's raising this kid on her own as well. And at least she's been trying to up to this point. She thinks this is the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
She thinks they're going to starve to death,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's no hope. Of course, there's a famine across the whole land. This is during the time when Elijah had also prayed, and we didn't have this prayer.
James chapter
5. Yeah, James talks about this prayer, that he had prayed that it wouldn't rain, and it didn't rain
for
three and a half
years
years.
and 6 months. It didn't ever rain.
No rain.
Elijah, that poor old prophet man. Sorry.
But yeah, and it wasn't like it just didn't rain in Jerusalem, or I mean in Samaria. I was in Jerusalem because that's in Samaria where the king Ahab and Jezebel were staying. It didn't rain in the whole area, and even over here in Sidon and in Tyre,
which suffering. Is like right next to the Mediterranean Sea. It was like right nearby the shoreline. Like Tyre's an island, if I remember correctly. So if anybody's going to get rain and have
island
water
out in the ocean,
you would expect
you'd
they
expect
would
some rain.
Yeah. So now that we're over 6.5 minutes in and haven't read a single section of what we're supposed to,
it's fine. We're doing good.
I know. I'm just pointing out how long
you really are obsessed with time.
It's a cool thing. I have stopwatches. It's stopwatches. I have
you
pocket
realize
watches.
Time is
like the little wind-up ones. They're so cool.
Time is not. I mean, time hasn't always existed.
Time is a river.
Time hasn't always existed.
On to the words which we have not ours. Were of us. They know what I'm talking
Apparently,
about.
English isn't a real thing either for him.
Hey, English hasn't always existed. What's your point?
True.
And he cried to the Lord. This is Elijah, of course. And he cried to the Lord, O Lord my God, have you brought calamity even upon the widow with whom I sojourn by killing her son? Then he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and cried to the Lord, O Lord my God, let this child's life come into him again. And the Lord listened to the voice of Elijah, and the life of the child came into him again, and he revived. And Elijah took the child and brought him down from the upper chamber into the house and delivered him to his mother. And Elijah said, See, your son lives. And the woman said to Elijah, Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is truth.
That last line is the most shocking of all. It really is.
Yep.
We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, so, I mean, I'm not sure that there was, is really any significance to him stretching out over the way. Some people were saying, well, he did CPR and he was doing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation or something. And that's not the indication. It's just but it's some sort of a ritual type thing and he does this.
Yeah, I feel like it was kind of a cultural thing. That it's like I was wondering specifically about the significance of that. I think it was a cultural thing that the Jews, the people at that time frame, would have understood. Oh, this is what he's doing, and it just doesn't make sense to us now because we're not that culture, we're not that time frame, and that's kind of been lost. That said, I don't know. One of the things that I do think is interesting is in the first sentence he says, have you brought calamity even upon the widow with whom I sojourn? They were living in one spot. When we think of sojourning, we think of like the Israelites wandering throughout the wilderness.
Camping from place to place.
And so I find it interesting that he uses that word with whom I sojourn, thinking that
he was just camping for a while. It may have been her house, but it wasn't his house. He's just hanging out.
But just that he uses it to describe both of them, kind of. It's interesting to me.
Yeah, and well, I guess really kind of that idea, this world is not my home. Mm-hmm. I'm just a passing through. So wherever he went, Elijah had this idea, I'm not home. This is just
also along with sojourning comes along the idea of like troubles and a harsh reality. It's not like
nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, I'm
It's
living
not
in
like
one place.
vacationing.
Yes, exactly.
Vacationing and sojourning, two very different things, even though they both involve travel.
Yeah. So even if they are in one spot, just the sojourning idea there is, we're fighting, we're trying to stay alive here, and it's rough, basically. And I just kind of like the wording there.
And of course, obviously, they did not make that one last piece of bread and then starve to death.
Yes.
Because, of course, God worked a miracle there as well. But
Mm-hmm.
And Elijah had said, if you'll make the bread and make me some bread first then, everything will be okay. Mm-hmm. And so it was that the flour and the oil didn't ever run out.
Yep.
They kept eating it every day, on and on. And so, so she saw that miracle and has been experiencing that miracle for however long a period of time this is. We don't know exactly how long it's been at this point.
12 years.
Probably not that long. The boy is still just a boy.
And it was only, a drought.
3.5 years total. So, less than 3.5 years. But he'd been with her for a while, and they'd been eating this food for a while, and everything's been going fine. Things seem to be going good. And she's seen that, and yet then
die.
When her son dies, of course, she blames.
She lashes out.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's be honest.
And we didn't read that part because that kind of comes before his prayer. Obviously, she comes. What did you do to me? Why did you bring this trouble on me?
Yeah.
It's like, well, lady, you were gonna starve to death, and yet now, but then after the resurrection of the boy to life again, she says, "Now I know that you're a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is true." Truth. But didn't she already know that from the first miracle? But it's something about us people. It's like, even if we've seen the goodness of the Lord before, we're so forgetful.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you think also about like what she went through. We don't know exactly, from what I remember, the circumstances of the boy's death. It's just he died.
Yeah, he just dies.
And depending on how that happened, like especially if it's really mysterious, as the parent who believes in God but not super strongly, perhaps, you can be like, this person shows up, stays here for a while, everything's going well, and then my kid dies a mysterious death and we have no clue what caused it.
Must have been him.
It had to have been, something spiritual going on, because if it was physical, there would have been evidence. He would have gotten sick. I could have seen that he was hurt. All this, there would have been symptoms. But, if there's not symptoms,
well, it does say it does say that he did fall sick, so he did get sick.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that part.
Yeah, so it's not like he was just walking along and just dropped dead. Like you might think from an aneurysm or something.
Like the kid in the field.
Well, and that one said, "Oh my head." He may have had an aneurysm.
Yeah.
I mean, weird things. I've known some situations like that, but yeah, he was sick. He got sick. It got real bad, and then he died.
Lovely.
There was no breath left in him. But then she blames Elijah. She said, "Oh, you man of God, are you come to me to call my sin to memory and to kill my son?" She's like, maybe you came, seeming to be nice to me, but just so you could make me feel bad about my sins and kill my kid.
Yeah.
Which, of course, that was not at all why he was there. But then, of course, he cries out to God, and God answers the prayer. But it's just, when we're in grief, we often
just kind of
lash out. We want to blame someone for the sorrow that we're going through. And whether it's, as she says, you're calling out my sin. You know, is it my fault? Did you come to kill my son because of my sins?
Yeah, and that's one of the
stuff.
things is a lot of times with grief, one of the reasons that we lash out is not so much because we're just upset in general or because we're upset at a specific person or something, but
It's often
oftentimes
misdirected.
it's oftentimes because we're upset with ourselves and we're asking ourselves, why did this happen? Was it because
What
of
did I
something
do?
I did?
Yeah.
What did I do? Is there something I could have done differently? Basically saying this death, this calamity, whatever it is, it's my fault.
But I don't want to take the blame for it.
Yeah.
So I want to look at see somebody else I can blame.
Yep.
But I mean, it is very human emotion to lash out at everyone and anyone, and to lash out even at God.
Yep.
Often people do, as well. But it is one of those things, of course, that we, in our saner moments, I guess you could say, we realize, no, obviously God didn't do this. God didn't, it's not. But then, of course, I mean, obviously there were times in the Bible when God did, and it was God that did it.
And things like that happening, especially for people of the time frame, can give a lot of doubt as to, oh, I heard about this time when God took in an army and slaughtered all these people or struck these people dead with a plague. Well, maybe my son did die because of God. And it is, especially back then, I can see how it definitely could have caused a lot of doubt.
Well, and and sometimes I'm not sure that we're better off not having some of those feelings. Something I've been looking at recently, and that world, their cultures, the biblical culture, very much believed that the spiritual world, the spiritual realm, was interacting regularly with the physical realm where we lived. Because of the rationalism of the 19th century, we've really kind of pushed everything supernatural out of our lives. So, if somebody dies, it was because, well, we can find the cause. It had to have been some disease, or it had to have been some this, or it had to be some that. And yet, God himself even says, am I not the one who makes blind and makes sighted? Am I not the one who kills and makes alive? Am I not? He says, I'll tell you, I am ultimately in control in this world, and everything that happens, I know about it. I'm involved. And we sometimes want to push everything out and try to say, well, there's a rational explanation. Sometimes the rational explanation is something to do with the spiritual realm. Sometimes it does have something to do with God.
Like, what is it? Sherlock Holmes says, when you've gotten rid of
eliminated the impossible, the only thing that remains, however implausible or improbable, is the truth.
Yep. And when you can't find any natural, rational causes for anything, no matter how hard you search.
Well, and the problem too, though, is even if we can find logical, rational explanations,
doesn't mean it's the only reason.
That doesn't mean that that's God. Certainly, since he created this natural world, he can use natural events to bring his judgment or to bring his blessings or whatever, to make things happen. And so many times we fail to give him the glory for the good things. We fail to look to see, and it is a good thing for her to say, is this because of my sin? Are you trying to bring my sin to remembrance? Are you trying to make me remember my sins? When we do suffer, we should look to see, is
good
this
to have
something,
some self-analyzation?
Is there a reason in my life that brought this on? It's good to humble ourselves and consider that possibility that maybe it is something I did. Maybe it is sin in my life that's caused this. It may not be, but we should at least consider that as a possibility and not just reject it out of course. Oh, well, I got this, I got sick with this just because. Well, what if I got sick with this because I did some things I wasn't supposed to do, that God told me not to do?
Yep.
You know, there are a lot of times we think about things like sexually transmitted diseases.
Yep.
And people get a sexually transmitted disease and they, well, I go, yeah, I've got this disease. Well, why did you get that disease? Because you were out there disobeying God's rules about sexuality. Now, obviously, there are some people who weren't disregarding those rules and still get those things.
Yep.
And that brings to another thing, is sometimes it actually is another person that causes us suffering. I guess we could go in. Sometime we'll have to have a lesson on what causes human suffering and how to examine the human suffering situation. But that's something that we should consider, the possibility that maybe it is because I am doing something that displeases God or that violates his natural laws, and that's causing me these pains and these troubles and these sickness. And I mean, Paul talks about that in the first century. This is not just an Old Testament thing. Paul talks about this when he writes to the Corinthians. He tells them that their abuse of the Lord's Supper was the reason that many among them were sick, and some, he uses the euphemism, sleep.
Yeah.
He said, some of you died because y'all are abusing the Lord's Supper.
Mm-hmm.
And some of you are sick because of it. In Revelation, God says to the Jezebel in Thyatira, I'm going to cast her and her children into a bed of sickness, and they're going to suffer, and I'm going to fight against them because they're doing these things that are against me. And
yeah, it's interesting. In school, we've actually been slowly working our way towards the 1900s. Currently, we're in about 1800s time, and we're dealing with a lot of anatomy, biology, physics sort of things, and just looking at how the excess spiritualism of the earlier times messed up science in a way where it's just like, oh, the heart doesn't do anything, the brain doesn't do anything other than just hold these different little spirits, and then those spirits go about the body and do all these different things. And in a way it's kind of like, well, maybe yes, but at the same time the heart pumps blood throughout the body and gets oxygen from the lungs, and like these things have actual purposes that we can figure out. And so there was a lot during that time of taking apart the things that were older and that they thought they knew solidly, and being like, well, nope, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong.
It doesn't work that way.
And I think, in a way, as time continued to go on, they started to go too far. And they started to be like, well, that's wrong, when because of
everything's wrong. Mm-hmm. Anything of that.
When because of spiritual aspects, like, that's a thing that's hard to measure. It's something that's hard to, like, you can't see it or hear it. It's really hard to get a grip on. Yeah. And so because of that,
really kind of impossible to get a grip on it.
Because of that, I think that they did toss out a lot of concepts and ideas that may be wrong, but may be true, just because they were trying to get away from the things they couldn't see and analyze back onto the things that they could see and analyze, which in a lot of ways is noble, especially concerning some of the more visual sciences, where it's like, okay, we're going to do an anatomy lesson. Look, we have a corpse here. We cut it open. We see, oh, look, here's the heart. It looks like this, and it does this, and yada, yada. You know, that's fine. It's very concrete. You can lay hands on it. You can see it. You can work with it. It makes sense. And you don't want to just have a bunch of, you know, misinformation stuck in your head from 300 years ago.
The bad humors of the blood and all
exactly.
that kind of thing.
You don't want to have that stuck in your head when you're trying to save somebody's life by treating them.
You don't want the leeches to suck somebody's blood out and kill them because they had bad blood.
But at the same time, yeah, but at the same time, you don't want to go so far to the point that the only reality that you know is what you can analyze.
That's called materialism.
Mm-hmm.
That basically says there is no spiritual, there is nothing beyond this. Like, we as human beings, we're just animals, just like every other animal, and we die like every other animal, and that's the end of everything. We decay, and that's it. And there's no other world, there's no other life, there's no other anything.
And honestly, a great part of our mindset, a lot of people are like, well, yeah, materialism, this world is the only world and we are just animals and it doesn't matter all that much. We evolved from, whatever, just taking in all
we're parasites on the earth, and we're the bad things that need to be eliminated.
Just taking in all of the popular thinking of this current day and age, I guess you could call it. But especially last year, I would talk with some people about this, especially last year with 2020 virus going around. If we are just animals, just a virus, a parasite on this planet, then why didn't we react the way we should have last year? Because think about it. If we are just parasites, if we are just like any other animal, then why does it matter when one of us dies? Why is that important to anyone? We're just animals, right?
Yeah.
So why does it matter if I kill you, if you die from a virus? Why is that important? Why bother feeling sad at all?
Yeah,
why go through all the lockdown?
The lion doesn't feel bad when it kills the gazelle.
Mm-hmm.
The coyotes don't feel bad when they kill the deer or the rabbit or the fox that kills the rabbit. And they don't feel bad. They don't care that it died.
Yep. There's a song that I listen to that actually goes, "Does the wolf apologize?" when he takes his mark and stands on top, and just kind of laying out this idea. And as humans, I think it's good for us to realize on some level that this is worthless, it is meaningless, it doesn't matter, even though it is matter. But at the same time,
matter doesn't matter.
It is important because it's where we are now.
Yeah.
This is what we have to deal with.
It's where we live.
This is what we have to use, and we need to make good use of it. Does it matter on some level? No, it doesn't. But does that mean that we can just throw it all away? No, we need to be careful with it. Yeah. And I think a lot of people kind of pick up on this because they're like, no, we evolved from this and this and this, and when you get right down to it, we're not important because,
the human body is made up of minerals that are worth $7.45, and that's all a human being's worth. But no, because, people will pay, like, huge amounts of money for a body part, a heart, a lung.
And at the same time, like, if we are so terrible and worthless, why do we have such a strong killer instinct to survive? To do, in a lot of cases, whatever it takes to not die.
Well, even the animals have that.
Mm-hmm. But
life is a precious thing.
Mm-hmm.
That reminds me of the Emo Phillips joke about the guy on the bridge that's going to commit suicide.
Oh, the Baptist one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's sad.
But
it's true.
On so many levels, it's sad.
It's so accurate.
But it's oh, yeah. But so the guy sees a guy, he's gonna jump off the bridge, and he's like, "Don't do it." You can look it up. It's hilarious. Emo Phillips, comedian. It's hard to listen to him because his voice is scary. Anyway, because his voice is like this all the time. No. But he's like, don't do it. You got so much to live for, and he starts talking to him, and then
it's like, well, what do we have in common?
Are you religious? And so then he starts going down. Well, are you this? Or are you that? And oh yeah, I'm this. Oh yeah, me too. And goes on down there, and like several different steps, and he finally gets down to one division within a church. And he's like, well, were you this one or that one? And the guy's this one, and then he's like, die, heretic scum, and he pushes him off the bridge. So kind of backfired, but that's kind of the way we we see life as precious, and then yet at the same time, sometimes
And
we don't see it as
the
precious.
one that really gets me is murder. Like, if you see lives as worthless, then why is there a punishment for murder? Why is cannibalism considered a bad thing, where you kill someone and eat them? If we are all just matter, just animals, we all are just fighting to survive.
Yeah, the coyotes don't complain when one of the coyotes kills the leader coyote and takes his place.
Or, you know,
and unfortunately, though, in some, you know, sometimes in gangs and things, it's really has almost gotten to that point where, you know, one kills the other one, and they're like, oh, okay, now you're the new boss, and they don't even bat an eye at it. But, you know, a lot of that is from this teaching that we're just animals.
And part of it gets down to the whole nature versus nurture issue. Are we like this naturally? Is, like, if you're born and raised in an environment without any outside philosophy or teaching, would you believe that murder's a bad thing? Would you believe cannibalism's a bad thing? Or would you be just like an animal and just, you know, anything goes, basically, just like an animal? Is that our nature? Or have we been brought up over decades and centuries and, you know, thousands of years through teaching like this to believe, well, yes, murder's wrong. Well, yeah, you don't eat other people because they're like you. Well, yeah, we're not like animals. Are these things that we believe as humans, as a society, because of who we are as humans, or because of the things that people before us told us and taught us? Nature versus nurture. And honestly, that's a pretty tough question.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a combination of those factors as well. But, and how did we get to this exactly?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I thought so. And don't get him started on philosophy stuff. For one thing, it'll addle your brain listening to him, and for another, he'll never quit.
Yeah.
How many nights till 3 a.m?
Hey, you rattle on with that too, so.
So he says.
Yep.
Which one of us do you think you can believe?
Yep.
I mean, really.
But yeah, philosophy, psychology, religion, theology, all the ologies.
All the ologies.
Give me an inch and I'll take a mile.
Mileology?
Mileology. That's very American.
Well, anyway, so we see life did matter.
Life did matter.
And God cared enough to bring this one life. I mean, you think about how many people.
My line. I was gonna say that. No.
Think about how many people probably were dying all over that region because of this drought that caused, of course, a famine, and you know they didn't have enough food, and there were people starving all over the place. But God cared enough about this one life that when Elijah prayed for this boy, he brought him back. That's an amazing thing when we really think about it. Well, again, because it's a Wednesday night and a Wednesday night class time, we went a little longer. Well, or a lot longer. Yeah. Like a Bible class length kind of.
A lot longer. Time. We went like 10 minutes over what we usually do.
Well, that's a lot. I mean, that's like 50% increase.
Yeah, that's fair.
But now we have to stop and get something to eat while this uploads. So.
Hope you have a good night, and we'll see y'all around.
Look at another prayer from
Watch
Kings
some of the other videos while you wait.
Yeah, you can always watch that one where we discovered that the Mandalorian was prophesied in the Bible.
Bye.
Bye.